Hi, my name is Todd Gilliard. I am Project Director of the Minority Business Development Agency Business Center of St. Louis. I'd like to welcome you to our Money Talk series. I'd like to also thank MBE Capital Partners for being a part of this, as well as the Magic Johnson Enterprise. Just to give you a little brief introduction to the MBDA Center, we are a center that is a federally funded center by the Department of Commerce, located nationally throughout different states to provide services for businesses and corporations around the country. We have export centers, also where we work in several countries as China and Africa. Here in St. Louis, we provide technical support for our MBEs, as well as work with our corporate partners to provide services, MBE services, to those partners. I'd like to thank you again for being a part of it. Please have your pen and your paper ready and all your questions together. I'd like to at this time to introduce Jamila Pointer, who is our Vice President of Financial Consulting. Jamila.
Thank you, Todd. My name is Jamila Pointer, and welcome everyone to the Money Talk webinar. My guest speaker is no stranger to the MBDA nationally. When I read the Washington Post and saw his name alongside with Magic Johnson, I said, I have to invite him to come on the Money webinar talk show. So he agreed, and he wanted to come on and talk about the $100 million that has been allocated specifically to help minority and women-owned businesses in underserved communities who did not receive the funding the first time around. But before I begin, I want to talk a little bit about Mr. Martinez's background. Mr. Martinez has over 30 years working experience in the middle market with middle market companies in developing financial solutions that allow clients to leverage the use of internal assets to increase cash flow. He has overseen over $9.4 billion in financing over the last 5 years, which have helped clients increase revenue exponentially. Raphael used his strong interpersonal skills to help seasoned CEOs and CFOs develop an understanding of their most pressing needs to develop financial solutions that address them. He has built a solid reputation with capital market professionals providing viable financing opportunities that have performed at or above project levels. Raphael is recognized for his ability to build, guide, and sustain successful financial services organizations in marketing products and managing the ongoing delivery of those services. He is adept at negotiating major financial contracts as well as fostering effective relationship at the highest level. A creative deal maker, yes he is, with a solid track record of developing companies and customer productivity. Raphael combines his excellent presentation, negotiation, closing, and follow-through skills with his strong ability to build an industry presence. He is the CEO of MBE Capital Partners, LLC, MBECP, which was established with the strategic objective of developing strategic, straightforward financing products for small to mid-sized MWBEs. As a division of Raphael's 21 years old Republic company, MBECP offers alternative financing through its accounts receivable, purchase order, and supply chain financing using its dynamic ASAP, which stands for Accelerated Supply Pay Program. But before it all began, Mr. Martinez is a passionate entrepreneur working on niches that no one else focuses on. Raphael is a family man living in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. He enjoys travel, music, watching his daughters compete internationally for the Dominican Republic national fencing team. Raphael also supports his alma mater, Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx, by providing scholarships and unique enrichment opportunities. He was blessed with 30 years of a marriage to his late wife, Ina, and continues to be thankful for his daughters, Chelsea and Samantha. And without further, Raphael, thank you so much for being so wonderful and coming on to talk about this new venture that you have with Magic Johnson.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Jamila, and the rest of the St. Louis MBDA team, who we've had the pleasure to work with for quite some time now. One of the main things that we do at MB Capital is really look at helping to grow and scale women and minority-owned entities that are doing business with Fortune 500 companies. This year will be 21 years old in September, and I've been doing the same thing for the last 30 years. So strictly doing business with minority firms who need to grow and scale and really want to keep their equity. So our goal is really to just move these companies forward, look outside of the traditional financing norms to make sure we're delivering the cash that they need. So everybody talks about, access to capital, access to capital, access to capital. Our mantra here is access to cash flow, because once you have predictable cash flow, you can start rearranging your foresight and looking at what you can pay today, tomorrow, next week, next month, based on predictable cash flow and predictable cash needs that you have to expend. So when we were asked to help with the PPP program, it was outside of our norms because we do not do traditional loans from the standpoint of bank loans. We're a non-bank lender. We were approved as such with the SBA, and we're really looking to help these minority firms. To date, we've funded over $100 million of the PPP loans. We have about $275 million within our pipeline, and we are looking to create a mad rush over these last 2 weeks, because these loans are not going to wait for you. Individuals that have not applied for these loans, they need to get on their horse and really ride that in and get an application in as soon as possible so that we can get individuals helped out. So I want to focus in on, and I'm sorry for the delay, but I want to focus in on one important component, because during the first tranche of the PPP loans, those loans are given to the VIPs of the banks. The second tranche came around, and the individuals who weren't taken care of the first time, they participated in the second round. The individuals that are being left behind, and I will say that over 90% of minority firms have not received PPP loans, which is super sad, because a lot of people feel that they can't qualify or they can't, so the adage is, why should I try if I'm not going to get it? What these individuals need to understand is that they've lowered the bar like no other time in our history so that you can qualify for these loans. These loans are also forgivable loans, so if you use a loan to pay yourself, pay salaries of employees, pay utilities and rent, it will be forgiven. Now, one of the things that we're coming across on right now is sole proprietors and smaller firms. Something as simple as your 1099 and showing an estimated Schedule C and showing that on line 31 that you actually made money will qualify you. An individual who's paid himself $100,000 a year That turns out to about a $20,800 loan on the PPP side. So I suggest that people run to our website, MBE PPP, that's Mary Boy Echo, Peter.com, to apply for these loans. Let's go on the next slide, please. So here are the benefits to these PPP loans. Number one, they're forgivable. If within an 8-week period you use the loans for 60% salary, 40% utilities and rent per se and general overhead, these are forgivable loans. So you have a 24-week period to use the funds within an 8-week period. So using the funds within 8 weeks, it can happen at any given time within a 24-week period. And if you use it for the payroll overhead, as I mentioned, these are forgivable loans, and we will help with that on the backside as well. Mm-hmm. But whatever is not forgiven, this is at a rate of 1% and can be paid out over a 5-year period. Right now, we're seeing the average loan of about $60,000 that we're seeing going out through the door right now. Let's move on to the next slide. So again, and most of you may know this already, but fewer than 500 employees. We're doing some great programs with churches and other houses of worship, not-for-profits, and sole proprietors. The last one, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals, that's where we're seeing most of the applications come through right now. Those are the individuals that weren't really prepared with their documentation, but our team is ready, willing, and able to help. Make sure that when you apply, that you have your 1099s, you have your Schedule C, or at least the estimated Schedule C. And that will help us get these loans approved as fast as possible. Let's go on to the next slide. So, as I mentioned before, this is probably the easiest loan you will ever get based on the requirements. This is not based on your credit, not your business credit, or your current collateral that you're going to be posting to borrow against. All we really need is U.S. identification, the structure of the ownership, IRS tax documentation, so your 1040s, your Schedule Cs, your 941s if you have payroll. If you're a sole proprietor, we want to make sure that on line 31 on your returns, you show profit there. That's important. And if you, for many of you have not already filed your returns, you can go ahead and create an estimated Schedule C, and that'll show us based on what you will be paying yourself and your employees. That has to be part of the application process. So these items should be in hand prior to submitting or going through the application process. Let's go to the next slide, please. So here's the most important thing. Today is June 17th. On June 30th, this will end unless we have an extension of the PPP program. I suggest people apply because we have to have applications submitted to the SBA no later than the 30th of June. We can go ahead and fund and do promissory notes thereafter, but we need an SBA approval no later than the 30th. So that means at the very least, applications have to be in by June 27th so that we have time to process and get it through to the SBA and double check everything to make sure that all the required minimum docs are in. So that's it on this slide. I'd like to answer particular questions as well.
So So Raphael, thank you so much for the presentation. And folks, the deadline, you heard it, is June the 30th. And but I did have a few questions, Raphael, before I open it up to the audience. And this is just in talking to MBEs some who did not receive the funding the first time around, and others who know that there's funding available. But as you know, many minority business owners that are located in low income areas, like restaurants, barbershops, and hair salons, that might not have payroll. And I saw that on your slide. These businesses may have rent and other overhead costs, but may not qualify for the PPP. How can MBE Capital assist these type of businesses? I know we got a short window here, but how could you guys help them?
So here's the secret sauce, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
They actually do qualify for the PPP loans.
Okay.
The problem is most small businesses and small sole proprietors pay everybody else and not themselves. And any entrepreneur out there knows that come Friday payroll, you're worrying about everybody else and you worry about yourself last. In this instance, what you have to do is worry about yourself first. And if you do an estimated Schedule C, you're going to put yourself down as the actual salaried employee for those sole proprietors. So restaurant owners, barbershops, small flower shops, whatever it is, this is finally the opportunity for you to pay yourself first and take into account your overhead. So how they did the 2.5 of the salary, monthly salary, is really it's 8 weeks worth of salaries, and that 0.5, the other half a month, is really so that you can pay your rent and utilities off of that portion. So if you say you make $100,000 a year, that turns out to a loan of $20,800 that you qualify for. You now have an 8-week period to use those funds to pay yourself. At least 60% of that has to go to your salaries, and the balance goes towards your rent and utilities.
Okay.
But on the question of how do we help them,
Mm-hmm.
we need them to apply so that we can help. Because most of them have everything in hand, and if they create a Schedule C, an estimated Schedule C, we can make sure we run this through and help them out.
Thank you, folks. I hope you're hearing this. And so make sure you reach out to Raphael. Let us know if anything we could do, certainly to help facilitate that, because we've got money here. So we want to make sure that you guys get this money in your pockets to help you going forward. The other question I have is, and it's sort of numbers that were thrown at me, that over the last 5 years, only 23% of Black-owned businesses were able to get credit from a bank since the first CARES Act package drastically shut out many Black and brown businesses from receiving PP funds due to the lack of relationships with banks. How many minority businesses strategically build credit relationships for the next wave of PPP loans if they do not have established credit history with banks right now?
So great question. One of the main things that we did as a non-bank lender, we don't have a need for a depository relationship. So unlike traditional banks and other lending institutions that require deposits or accounts, all we needed to know is whether or not you paid salaries, and if you have the right documentation, we can work with you. Our goal was really to take care of those who were being shunned from the bank standpoint. The banks wanted to lend to the individuals that were already borrowing from them because the KYC, know your client, know your customer, that was easy. If you're already a borrowing client, they know you, they do business with you, and here's free money. That's what they're saying. On our side, we have to get to know you from the standpoint of, are you a legitimate business? Do you have real paperwork? And then we can say, here you go. But not that we need you to have a depository account or existing loans with us.
So I have one other question, Raphael, and then we're going to open it up to the audience, the chat room for questions, Q&A. Jamaica and I. The last question has to do with obviously your relationship with Equitrust, with the life insurance, with Magic Johnson, who's the majority shareholder. And the question is, what ways can similar community stakeholders build relationships with larger companies to reinvest those funds back into the community?
So another great question. One of the easiest things that I have been talking about over the last several months, based on our ability to get involved with the SBA PPP program, was why don't we start banking with Black institutions? We have to make these entities relevant. So, you know, I like coming up with great ideas and I like talking some stuff. And I said, well, Raphael, what about you and your business? So as of last week, we put a deal together with Carver Bank out of New York, African American bank, and we established a program to borrow funds from the Fred window through Carver Bank. That alone is going to give Carver Bank a huge upswing with regards to fees and the ability to attract larger commercial clients. We're also talking about large-scale programs on the accelerated supplier pay program that we run, which will also give Carver the ability to create larger programs. The easiest thing in the world to do is take your dollars and give them elsewhere where it doesn't matter. The hardest thing to do is shore up these companies that are strategically placed around you, because now you make them relevant, and that attracts the eye of a Magic / Irvin / Equitrust / everybody who wants to do something. You kind of raise the eyebrow and say, hey, what about those guys? They're doing X, Y, and Z. She's doing this. Let's call her. He's doing that. Let's call him. I think you have to start in your own backyard, and I really think that we should start banking, and let's call it of color. Black, brown, yellow, anything that you can, you know, pink, red. Start putting your money in your own institutions so that they become relevant, so that now they attract, no different than the CEO of Netflix announcing yesterday, I believe it was, that they're giving they're giving $120 million to Morehouse, Spelman, and the United Negro College Fund. $40 million each. Game changer.
Yes.
But you have to be relevant so that people can pay attention.
Raphael, this is good stuff, and we could probably go on all day because this is right on my backyard. So I can't thank you enough. And, you know, right now with everything that's going on in our country, this is so needed, and I can't stress it enough of putting the dollars back in the Black, brown, as you say, yellow, pink communities is so important. And so this is a lot of great stuff. And what I want to do now is kind of open it up to our audience, and I'm going to ask my colleague Jamaica to start, and then I'll ask you the question.
Okay, one of our questions is, I was in the process of opening a local grocery store. How do I estimate Schedule C for the taxes?
So we have to make sure we understand that this is part of the last quarter. So if you're in the process of opening up something this very second, you do not qualify for a PPP loan. But if you open something up relatively shortly, you know, short time period ago, let's say December, January, in that time frame, you qualify for the PPP.
Okay, thank you. And our next question is, can you apply for a second PPP if you've already received one?
So the answer is no. Stay away from jail. You qualify. So if you applied for PPP, the PPP loan, you can't or you should have applied for the IDL. And let's say the disaster loan, let's say you apply for $1,000 and you qualify for 20,000 on the PPP side, you just reduce the IDL loan from that, and then you qualify for 19,000.
Hell money out there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another question. Thank you so much, Raphael. I'm curious to know eligibility for new businesses. My firm began operating in December 2019. I believe this kind of goes back to the last question. It was one of the questions asked.
Yeah, so they qualify.
Okay.
And in this instance, whatever you paid yourself, you're going to have about 3 months worth of calculations. But again, this is the prime example of the individual that can create an estimated Schedule C to show where they're going to be paying the money. So you can pay yourself up to $100,000. You're going to have to show that in payroll over that 8-week period. But you definitely can apply, and I suggest they go to MBE PPP and apply today because we can help that individual out.
Okay, then we have another question. I'm sorry. Is there still disaster relief funds out there?
I believe there is. That's not our category, but I do believe there's still they're still taking applications for that.
Okay. What documentation would be required for the firms that began in December of last year?
Okay, so if you started in December, you should have had payroll December, January, February. So, and if you didn't have payroll and you didn't, of course, you haven't filed your taxes because you're probably waiting for 2021 to file your 2020 taxes. What you do is you create the estimated Schedule C, and that will tell us the payroll that you will have over this next 8-week period. So
Okay.
an estimated Schedule C.
Okay, so if you have a firm that has not filed the 1099 or Schedule C yet, is there any assistance for those types of firms in that predicament?
So really what they have to do is just go to the IRS website, pull down a Schedule C, and you're going to create your expenses, you're going to create your income, what you're going to be paying out, and then on line 31, that's going to show what you're going to be paying yourself and any employees. So they really need to go to the IRS and download that Schedule C and fill that out.
Okay, great. One final question. Just a reminder to everyone that we are open for live Q&A, so feel free to ask any questions. But the last question I have as of right now is that they want to know if you and MBDA Capital Partners assist with other SBA loan type of applications.
Yeah, that's a great question. Not as of yet, because we participated with the SBA for the PPP program. We are talking to them about continuing to be a non-bank lender for the SBA. And at that point, we will do most of the 7A programs at the SBA, that loans that can go up to $5 million.
Okay, and that is the end of the questions that I have as of right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamaica, for the Q&A session, and thank you, Raphael, for just being on point. And folks, you heard it here. The deadline is June 30th, and so Raphael's got the money to put out, and they really want to help small businesses in underserved communities. I want to say it again, in underserved communities that are so many times are not represented in these types of programs. And so we want to make sure you guys know the importance of it. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Todd.
Thank you.
We need your camera.
My camera's on. Thank you.
Not quite. Try it again.
Camera's on. Mic on.
You're good.
Okay. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. As you heard today, it is a very critical time for minority-owned businesses, small-owned businesses, those barbershops, those beauty salons, and those small companies who missed out on this PPP loan. The window is getting small. It is important that we get into a position right now to receive these funds. We hope that it will be another extension, and it could be, but why wait? Let's be prepared and be ready. I advise you to reach out to our offices, get with us. We can help you in the processing of those of the paperwork, help you with any questions. We can also refer you to SBA. We work closely with them, Calvin Wilson. And so, listen, I'm asking companies out there, if you need help, we're here, and we're here to support you. So therefore, if you need our help, reach out to us. We can be reached at area code 314-231-5058. And so make sure you contact us, and we'll make sure that we reach back to you. Also, just to let you know, MBDA nationally has created a CARES Act staff. We have them now here in the St. Louis within the business office. They're going to be helping you with the PPP loan, giving you all the information you may need, as well as helping those companies who have received it, making sure that they do the things they properly need to do to turn the loan into a grant. That's very important as well. So I look forward to talking with you. Thank you again for participating. And just to let you know, this is being recorded. Anytime you wanted to go back, listen, and learn anything that you may have missed, you can go to the same link that you clicked into to join this webinar to listen to it again. We thank you again here at St. Louis MBDA office and appreciate your time. Thank you and be blessed.